And best practices know exactly how to ask the right questions and to not be fearful that the patient might think that we're trying to sell them something, because we really don't have anything to sell. We have problems to solve and prescriptions to fill, period.
I had a chance to talk to Mark Hinton, who's the CEO of EyeFacilitate, where he coaches optical retailers to connect with their patients so they can increase profit and patient loyalty. We had a conversation about using data and having it help our optical business, and how you have to look at your data in a truly constructive manner to make good decisions about where you're headed. You're going to learn a lot from Mark here, and it's truly transformative. This is the Think Again podcast. Mark, you've always led with a passion when it comes to driving optical business. And now I want to leverage that passion to talk about the data, the facts. Why
Okay.
does it matter that a business owner gets so deeply into the numbers to be sure their business is finding success?
Very simply, what you measure, you can change. And your friend and mine, Jay Binkowitz, you know, had shared that with me years and years ago. And I felt like, for the longest time, we really didn't have ways to measure it accurately. I mean, we really paid attention to Jerry Hayes years and years ago and what we needed to consider when it came to, average revenue per exam, average revenue per patient, revenue per optical, all of these things that would make a difference. If I could, to me, it's like I want to see out of the windshield of the car. That's what's coming at me. Those I can look at as trends, right? And it's a big window. If I'm looking out of the rear view window, that's just taking, spools and spools of reports and trying to make something out of that. And I can't. It's time consuming, and it drops off and it falls off. And Scott, it's fascinating. I spoke with a practice. Now this, to be fair, this doctor had just taken this practice over, from a 40-year-old practice. And he said, we're just now trying to decide what practice software to use because everything's on paper. I said, well, we've got to be able to measure it if I'm going to come in and work with you, because we're going to goal set. So that leads me to the idea that everybody in the office, every department needs to really be aware, of what are the goals we're working towards? What's goal 1, goal 2, goal 3? What's the best thing that happens if we reach that goal? What's the worst thing that doesn't happen or what's the worst thing that happens if we don't reach that goal? And then what are 5 criteria personally that you take accountability for to be sure that that goal happens? And then we're going to measure it. And if we reached it, great, we'll buy a cake. If we didn't reach it, there's 3 things that are important to me. Are we up? Are we flat? Or are we down? If we're up, great, we're working it. If we're flat, we might have reached the complete equilibrium, the best we could possibly do under the circumstances until something else changes in the future. If we're down, we just took our eye off the ball. Something else got more important. Or, we, in our discussions, in our meetings, Scott, we said something like, let's all get behind this and that, be sure we do the thus and so that we end up with and let's try and do that. And at the meeting 3 months later, it's like, how are we doing with the thus and such? Oh, when were you supposed to start that? I've heard it before. So to me, it is the accountability, the responsibility of the entire team working together in whatever the goal is for that particular department that's going to build from the ground up to the exam room, to the handoff, to the filling of the prescriptions, to the complete outcome of that particular goal.
So that's really interesting. You set those goals. You think about whether you've met an equilibrium. If you're up, we have cake. If not, we've missed something. And I'm curious as to how you set that number. Do you tend to care about how your business is doing relative to past performance, say same time last year now? Do you do national statistics or both?
Both.
Okay.
It's, what it demographic makes a difference as well. Whether I'm saturated with big box around me or whether it's just me and I'm drawing from the countryside. So that's where that's coming from. I'm also interested in seeing each month, looking at the reports, because they give me factual information, give or take, junk in, junk out. But if we're pretty good with it, we're going to get what we need. And then I'm also looking at best practices. So what's happening with best practices? Because that's where the opportunity lies. Because no matter where you go, people are people. If I'm in Seattle, the practice is I'm saying, so what's your capture rate for eyewear refractions, and what's your opportunity for it? What do multiples look like? And what's the biggest barrier? I just want a copy of my prescription. Well, I hear that in Minnesota, and I hear it in South Dakota, and I hear it in Florida. And it's like, do we know how to answer those things? So people are people no matter where we go. And best practices that are really knocking it out of the park, they're focused on those metrics, those KPIs. They're having weekly meetings, just check in. It doesn't have to be long, but just that check in that says, something, it's like, we're on this. How do we tweak it? What do you think's missing here? What do you need from me, the doctor? What do you need from me? What do you need from me, the tech, to set up the doctor? How are those questions asked? What are we asking patients? And are we even asking questions of the patient? Are we talking at them, or are we collaborating and bringing them into that? And best practices know exactly how to ask the right questions and to not be fearful that the patient might think that we're trying to sell them something, because we really don't have anything to sell. We have problems to solve and prescriptions to fill, period.
Yeah. So when I was running an eye care business,
Yeah.
we had a ton of metrics on what I'd call the big board. And
Yeah.
I know that we tripped over each other trying to improve performance on, all of them or many of them. How do you recommend others that are listening that might be doing the same? How do we break it down?
We break it down by actually taking time out of production to have a meeting and discuss it and then practice it. And then when we revisit again and we use those metrics, those KPIs and those metrics that we measured, then we're able to look, are we up from that? Well, good, we're up. What did we do? What was the role? Okay, so front office, what did you say differently that helped the patient? Well, after they were finished being checked in, we teased them with, you're going to love your choices of frames. We just had a remarkable refresh of styles in our optical. And we gain a lot of information from that, whether they go, you're too expensive, or good. And I need sunglasses also. Good information. That the questions are open-ended questions. Why do you think that we fell down on photochromic lenses? Because we looked at the patient, we said, did you want the lenses that darken when you go outdoors? And the next thing was, well, how much are they? So when we gain that information from each other, then we can really start to say, how do we lead the patient? And when you sit and write those things in leading the patient, don't think about the words on the page so much as thinking about, what is the patient hearing? What will they gain? What will they gain when we change the way we communicate with them? What risks can they avoid that they're not even aware of, like sun damage? Sun damage is much more powerful than the word UV rays. We found out in our own exam rooms, most patients didn't know what a UV ray was. So we talk about how to communicate the value of the patient, then check in with them. I want to be sure, Scott, that you and I together make a plan to reduce your risk of vision loss from sun damage. I see it in the clinic every week, and I don't want it for you. So I want to prescribe sunglasses to you with treatments and filters that will reduce that risk. So when you see me next year at this same time, I can tell you your eyes are healthy. Does that sound like a good idea for you?
That's great.
And what I did was I engaged the patient in the why. Not because we want to stop UV rays, but I want to reduce the risk of vision loss caused by sun damage. Patients hear that. We've got to connect into that, as well as you also heard me use your preferred name, because we're connecting.
Mhm. So when we're thinking about the data that measures the outcome of these actions you just described, are there some data that are sort of cyclical? You might look at them for little spurts and then sort of let them ride. Do you look at everything the same every time we have a clinic meeting? In other words, is something important for a while and then you let it coast? I'm trying to figure out how you can help us build and structure our data decisions. Which ones are the important ones right now?
If for years I just charged the patient $39 for an Optimap, but finally we just decided, you know what, we'll probably get 80% if we just do it. And then at checkout, tell them your exam with your copays is including the Optomap. And so when I'm at 80, 85%, depending on whether I accept, social aid programs like Medicaid and other programs like that, if I'm at 80, 85%, that's good. I'm happy with that. Don't want it to go below it. If I know from data from Esler that transitions lenses could easily be 35% simply by remembering to communicate that to all patients, and I know it could be at 35% as a static, and it could grow from there, then I already know what that metric is. And so what I'm going to do is that's my benchmark. And once I hit it, I'm going to go, well, what are best practices doing? Oh, 48%. I want that. So now I'm going to work from that standpoint.
Got it. And back to the ones that are equilibrium stats, right? We kind of get there. They don't tend to go down much, but they also don't go up. Maybe it's something like no-show rate. I'm just thinking of something as an example. That doesn't mean we shouldn't not pay attention to them, right?
Oh, for sure. And then I think it's really huddle up. Huddle up and let's discuss what are all the factors involved that we're missing that could improve that? What kinds of things should we do for the no-show rate? Well, there are many different professional offices, different medical disciplines that say, look, if you don't show, then there'll be a charge. And I know practices that do that, and they've reduced the no-show rate. For me, it's more in the communication with that patient. What does the patient need to hear? Cheryl, I want you to know that we run on schedule and the doctor is going to be prepared to see you on time. So what we're going to do is we have you scheduled at noon and we're going to see you at 11:45 in order to have you ready for your exam. Will that be fine with you? Can you think of any reason why you won't be able to be here at 11:45? And once the patient commits and says, no, I'll be there, we're either going to get a call or they're going to show up on time. Because here's the interesting thing about us humans. If I commit to you, I generally want to do what I committed to. Most decent people do. What we don't do well in optometry is ask the patient for confirmation, confirming that they agree. If for any reason you need to change your appointment, will you call here at least 24 hours in advance, because we always have a list of people who would love to have your time slot. And your time slot we've got is a very valued and coveted time. So now I just created urgency. It's like an infomercial. Can't resist it. And get another set simply for shipping and handling. Right? It's
Right.
human nature.
So the only other thing I can think about is the way that business owners sometimes are concerned about sharing information or data with their team. Is there anything that's off limits? Is there advice you can give us if we're a little fearful of giving our staff too much information, or is it just that you got to put the data on the table to know how to make it better? What do you suggest?
I feel like it's transparency. Everybody's into it, and it really helps. Even having teams understand we don't get to keep all of the money that we bill, to a managed care like an XYZ vision plan provider. There's going to be chargebacks. It's surprising how often I hear somebody say chargeback. What's that? So they think we get to keep all the money, and therefore they think that the owner's getting wealthy and going to Italy for 10 days while they're going to stay back behind, right? So
Right.
that's not what's going to happen. And we know it. So I'm a fan of transparency. We do it in our own office. Everybody's on board with it. It really does help a lot. I think if there are very specific things that might have to do with our cost of goods, for example, there's a team lead, for example, maybe the optical manager, that they know that information, but there are some information that you can look at and say, yeah, the team doesn't need to know that. We don't need to get bogged down with that. But there are those specific things that we're working with every day, to make a difference. I want to share one little tip for the viewers on this, that we're all trying to build multiple pairs. For example, most people have a closet full of choices and they own one set of glasses. How do you build your multiples? Well, a couple of things are important there when it comes to building multiples, because what we know happened in 2020 after the pandemic, really. But as late as 2023, 65% of households had less than $400 cash on hand for emergencies. When I'm budgeting for something, it's not like it's front of mind to budget for my eyewear. So first of all, don't use the word budget with people, because most people don't make budgets and they take offense to you thinking that they're on a budget. But we do have affordable choices. And so what I think is important is to always, we have at our disposal something that they don't, our northern friends in Canada don't have, and that's called easy time payments. And I'm pushing for my clients in Canada, look, get Afterpay or Klarna or one of these things that they can pay, because if I know that I can spread my payments out 3 to 6 months, I may buy that other set of glasses. But I don't have $1,500 today to pay you to get a couple sets of glasses in 10 days. The other thing that's important is the patient always hears 3 numbers at the end. What was it going to cost for their glasses? What's it going to cost for their glasses? And last and always last, what did they save? Followed with, I'm so happy that we're able to help you with this terrific savings today. Would you like to use a credit card, a check, or our 6 months easy pay plan? And they always ask about it, and it more often turns into the multiples. In the exam room, it's important that the doctor says, so Carol, your prescription changed today. Not, I updated your prescription. That is not language that the patients understand. That's why 5 minutes later or less, they look at the doctor and go, so did my prescription change? And it's like, your prescription changed today, Carol. And you're going to see sharper and clearer out of your new glasses. And where you're really going to notice it the most is at dusk and after dark, the hardest time of the day to see. I'm so happy I'm able to do this for you. And because your general purpose prescription changed today, so did your sunglasses, because you're going to want a seamless match when you switch between the two. Protect you when you're driving, see sharp and clear throughout your day. Do you have any questions I can answer for you? And those are 2 ways that we can start to build multiples where we'll actually start to see some changes in our practice.
Folks, this podcast is about taking data to the next level. And Mark Hinton from EyeFacilitate is telling you that we solve problems and we fill prescriptions.
We do.
Mark, thanks for being again our guest on the Think Again podcast.
Well, I thank you. I love the audience. I love what you do, Scott, to just bring about awareness in our marketplace with the challenges that we have today. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you for attending, everybody. This is the Think Again podcast, brought to you by GPN Visions, a peer-to-peer learning community to help grow your eye care business.